She vanished overnight. One moment, she was the queen of late-night laughs, Johnny's golden guest, the one he couldn't stop inviting. The next, she was gone. No cameos, no tributes, not even a sympathetic nod when the ratings dipped and the applause died down. No one ever explained why. The message was simple, brutal, and final. She was out. In Carson's world, that meant Hollywood turned cold too. What kind of king builds a late-night empire on both charm and silent fear? Tonight, we're peeling back the velvet curtain, stepping into the shadows of showbiz that most people never even knew existed. There was a time when The Tonight Show was more than just a talk show. It was Hollywood's gatekeeper. You wanted to make it? You wanted respect? You had to get that 5-minute slot across from Johnny. One wave, one nod, and your career could explode. But there was always a catch, an invisible line. Rules nobody dared say out loud, but everyone in the business understood. One slip, one misplaced joke, one moment of stealing Johnny's thunder, and you could find yourself not just off the guest list, but erased across the entire industry. Viewers at home never saw this. To them, it was all monologues, punchlines, thunderous applause. But under those studio lights, the tension was thick enough to taste. One wrong move, maybe an awkward joke, maybe something as innocent as getting too comfortable, and suddenly you were a ghost in showbiz. That's how it worked. There were no headlines, no on-air drama. Guests just vanished, their names quietly erased. And if you asked around, all you'd get was a shrug. You know how it is. For those on the wrong side, it was devastating. To be banned by Carson wasn't just an ego bruise, it could be the end of everything. That's the side of the story that never made it on TV. The real power played out behind the scenes in empty seats and forgotten names. So how did The Tonight Show become that powerful? What made Johnny Carson's approval, or his silence, so final? To answer that, you have to understand the show itself. It's impossible to overstate the size of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show if you didn't live through it. This wasn't just a gig for Hollywood's biggest stars and stand-up hopefuls. It was the stage, the place where a single wave from Johnny could launch a career overnight. Forget viral clips and streaming. This was the era when everyone tuned in, live, because missing Carson was like missing out on an entire conversation. Carson had an effortless magic about him. That sly smile, the deadpan timing, the signature pause that let the audience hang on every word. He could make the silliest bits like Karnak the Magnificent, with his thrift shop turban and corny predictions, feel like the most important thing on TV. But the real secret was how Johnny could make or break you. Comics knew if he called you over to the interview chair after your set, you'd made it. Jerry Seinfeld, David Letterman, dozens more owe everything to that signal. A nod, a smile, the ultimate endorsement. For 3 decades, this was the place to be. And if Johnny cut you out, everyone else followed. No one wanted to risk getting on his bad side. The reason? Carson invented the playbook for late-night TV. His format, monologue, sketches, banter, music, was so tight, so perfect, that future hosts from Jay Leno to Jimmy Fallon to Stephen Colbert have been copying it ever since. But with that power came danger. The same charm that could anoint a newcomer could quietly destroy a veteran. Johnny never needed to make a scene. If he stopped laughing, the industry took the hint. Some tried to pretend it didn't matter. Others learned the hard way. Just ask Rich Little, the legendary impressionist who got the silent boot after too many Carson impressions. Officially, they said his material went stale, but everyone in the business knew the real reason. Johnny didn't like the joke being on him. Or Dana Carvey, who did a pitch-perfect Carson impersonation to promote Wayne's World and never got invited back. Johnny didn't say a word. He just made it clear the door was closed. That was the scariest part. There was no warning, no rule book. You only found out where the line was after you'd crossed it, and once you did, you were done. So who paid the ultimate price for stepping over that invisible boundary? The story that stands above them all is Joan Rivers. If Johnny Carson ever had a chosen heir, it was Joan Rivers. Back in the 60s, she was one of the few women doing stand-up, hustling for club gigs and barely scraping by. Carson took a chance on her, Put her on The Tonight Show when almost nobody would touch her. She killed her first set. Johnny turned to the camera, grinned, and told America, "You're going to hear a lot about this girl." It changed her life overnight. He didn't just put her on TV. He mentored her, championed her, made her the permanent guest host when he took nights off. The king of late night and his queen in waiting, it was a dream team, or so it seemed. But off camera, the cracks were forming. By 1986, Joan got an offer from Fox to host her own show, the first woman ever to headline late-night TV. It was historic, but she knew it would hurt Johnny. NBC had made it clear she'd never get his job, and she took the Fox deal. Her mistake, not telling Johnny first. He heard it from someone else. Carson was furious. He didn't scream or threaten. He just hung up when Joan called, then refused to speak to her ever again. No return letters, no chance at forgiveness. She was cut out, not just from The Tonight Show, but from the whole NBC ecosystem. Anyone who appeared on her new show found themselves blacklisted from Carson's couch, too. Insiders said for Johnny, it wasn't business. It was personal, a betrayal of trust. She was like a daughter to him, one staffer remembered. But in Johnny's world, broken trust was the end of the road. Joan was devastated. She wrote him letters every year, hoping for a reply, but he never answered. It didn't end with silence. Carson erased her from the show's history. Decades of her appearances went unseen. Her name wasn't mentioned. She became a ghost in late-night lore. When Carson died, Joan said she cried, not for the industry, but for the mentor she lost, the man who first believed in her. She never got to say goodbye, never got closure. "I would have done anything to make it right," she said later, "but he wouldn't even look at me." And Joan wasn't alone. Not every band was about betrayal. Sometimes it was chaos. Bobcat Goldthwait, loud, wild, unpredictable, lit a chair on fire during a guest appearance. This was on Jay Leno's watch, but imagine Carson's face. Bobcat was banned, arrested, fined, and forced to film fire safety PSAs. That one stunt ended his late-night run for good. Kathy Griffin's whole career is built on being outrageous. Too many edgy jokes, and she found herself quietly banned, not just from The Tonight Show, but from multiple late-night spots. Johnny might not have pulled the trigger himself, but she would have never survived his standards. Some bans were over nothing, just a misunderstood joke or an unapproved stunt. Howie Mandel brought a giant stuffed tiger on stage trying to get a laugh. Johnny hated surprises, especially ones that threw off his rhythm. Howie was never invited back. No drama, no headlines, just silence. And sometimes honesty was too much. Lola Falana lit up every room, but when she spoke openly about the racism she faced in showbiz, it made Johnny uncomfortable. America wasn't ready, and neither was Carson. She never got another call. Other times, being banned was a wake-up call. Artie Lang, years later, got axed from Conan O'Brien's show for addiction issues. It felt like a punch, but Artie said it saved him. Sometimes the ban was the end. Sometimes it was the push someone needed to change. For a while, Johnny Carson and Wayne Newton looked like best friends, Burbank's king of late night and Las Vegas's velvet-voiced prince. But things soured in the early 80s when Newton outbid Carson for a share of the Aladdin Hotel. To Newton, it was business. To Carson, it was a slight. Johnny didn't fight back in person. He did what he always did, turned it into monologue material. Week after week, the jokes got sharper, more personal, less funny. Newton's looks, masculinity, even his kindness, nothing was off limits. Eventually, Newton had enough. He marched into NBC and told Johnny to his face to knock it off. After that, the jokes stopped, and so did the friendship. Wayne Newton was never invited back, not as a guest, not even for a handshake. That's how things ended when you crossed Johnny. Behind the scenes, the same rules applied. Cross the king, and you're gone. Before he ruled late night, Johnny Carson was just a Nebraska kid with a deck of cards and big dreams. He started as the Great Carsoni, working magic shows, then joined the Navy and later studied radio and speech in college. He paid his dues, bounced around small TV gigs, then landed The Tonight Show in 1962. Johnny was a natural. He made millions feel like they were hanging out with a friend every night. His cool, effortless wit was unmatched. But that was only on stage. Off stage, Johnny was intensely private. He controlled his world with the same precision as his punchlines. If you tried to get too close, you'd hit a wall. Everything had its place. No one crossed into his personal space. Not friends, not guests, not even wives. If you broke that unspoken rule, you could feel it instantly. The smile never faded, but the room went cold. Johnny ran the most watched show in America, but sometimes he was the loneliest man in the room. For all his brilliance in front of the camera, Johnny Carson's private life was more stormy than any late-night monologue. His desk may have been his throne, but at home things rarely played out so smoothly. He married 4 times, and each relationship revealed the same pattern. Hope, excitement, then disappointment as fame and distance crept in. His first wife, Jody Wolcott, was with him before the fame, but as Carson's star rose, the space between them widened. There were whispers, affairs, late nights, a restlessness that Johnny would later admit was real. Being faithful, he said, wasn't his strong suit. His second marriage to Joanne Copeland looked like a fairy tale from the outside. She was glamorous, sharp, and there during some of his brightest moments. But behind closed doors, it was war, infidelity on both sides, constant tension, and public collapse. Carson could joke about it on TV. He famously quipped that his ex-wives took everything but his cufflinks. But the truth was darker. The laughs masked the ache. The cycle repeated. His marriage to model Joanna Holland was a roller coaster. Glitter, gossip, heartbreak. When he finally married Alexis Moss in 1987, he seemed older, maybe a little more tired, maybe finally ready to close the book on public spectacle. That last marriage was quieter, more private. At least from the outside, it seemed he'd finally found some peace. But not every wound heals. Carson's relationship with Rick, one of his 3 sons, became public and painful. Rick battled addiction and legal trouble, and the pressure of being the son of America's favorite TV host weighed heavy. When Rick died in a car crash in 1991, Carson was never the same. The next time he was on TV, you could see the change, a fragility, a sorrow that even he couldn't hide behind a joke. When Carson retired in 1992, he didn't go out searching for the next spotlight. He slipped away. No new projects, no press blitz, no desperate clinging to relevance. He disappeared to Malibu, spent his days on his yacht, and turned down almost every interview. Some called him a recluse. He didn't seem bitter. He just wanted out, leaving the world to talk about him while he stayed silent. But even as he left, the legend grew. Johnny Carson was a paradox. On stage, he was effortless. Every glance, every pause, every joke made millions feel included, like he was winking just at them. Off stage, he was elusive, private, controlled, and almost unknowable. By the time anyone realized how sick Carson was, it was too late. Emphysema, decades of smoking catching up, took him quietly in 2005. No grand farewell, no tell-all interviews, just a final fade-out. But even before illness, Carson had already been etched into the DNA of American television. In 1987, he got a Peabody Award for 25 years of hosting The Tonight Show, a quarter century that changed the face of TV. By the 1970s, he wasn't just a famous host. He was the highest-paid star on television, tens of millions a year. At that level, you don't just run a show, you run the whole game. Maybe that's why, as the years rolled on, Johnny started pulling back. Maybe it was burnout, or maybe he saw the storm clouds gathering in his own life. He let guest hosts like Joan Rivers step in. Even when he was gone, his shadow stayed. It was always Carson's show, even when someone else was at the desk. His influence never retired. Watch any late-night show today and you'll see it. Jimmy Fallon's regular guy energy, Jimmy Kimmel's sly asides, even Stephen Colbert's desk routines, they're all built on the foundation Johnny laid. The monologue, the sketches, the chemistry with guests. That's Carson's playbook. Everyone since has just put their own spin on it. Was he perfect? Not even close. He could be cold, distant, sometimes even cruel. But he was also a master, a craftsman who understood the strange magic of making millions of strangers feel like friends. So what do you think? Was Johnny Carson just a genius entertainer, or was he the silent puppeteer of Hollywood's toughest room? Did he give stars a chance, or take it away with a smile? Let us know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a story Hollywood tried to bury. And if you're brave, watch our next video for more secrets from behind the curtain.